Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun today. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to make a quick stop in Nosara, Costa Rica to check in with Craig Sutton at Nosara Paradise Fishing. I got to get my billfish fixed, man, and that's my spot. That's my sweet spot to go to for sailfish and marlin. Then we'll come back to Florida. We're going to work our way down the East Coast, up the West Coast, and out the Panhandle, talking to the experts in each region about what they're doing. Now, tonight we got a little special mission I want to go on. I want to probe into their pet species and how they target them and how we can make you better at catching fish in your area. And as always, tonight's broadcast will be brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people back to nature. By DOA Lures, the unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore hybrids? You want to check out youngboats.com. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the podcast tonight. If you like it, we really wish you'd go on and rate it and tell us what you think and tell your friends about it. I think you're going to enjoy it, so let's get it rolling. It's time to head to Costa Rica to check in with Craig Sutton. Man, I hate that I only get to spend a few minutes a week in my favorite billfish destination in the world, but I'm going to take advantage of it. Hello, Craig Sutton. How's everything in Nosara?
We're real good, Captain Ricky. Fish are biting like crazy. I don't know if you see the video clip of last week on the Discover, that marlin, that blue marlin.
Yes.
Man, that's cool, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Week before last, and I forgot to tell you about it, we had a quintuplet sailfish release. We got 5 on, released all 5 of them, and got it all on video.
Holy smokes. I don't know that I've ever heard of that before.
Well, I know guys on the East Coast get them all the time. That's not that big of a deal. But those Pacific sails, that's a horse of a different color.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And trust me, we got all of it on video, and it's cool. It's like you just it's hard to believe they got all 5 of them. But they got them, you know, absolutely. Got every one of them.
You know what they call Pacific sailfish in Valdosta? Growed up.
Yeah, that's right.
Them sailfish over there is all growed up now.
They are growed up, man. I mean, I can remember about 30 years ago, the first 4 or 5 of them, we would bury the hooks to. They come out of the water and jump, and the captain would say sailfish. I go, no, man, that's a small marlin.
Uh-huh.
Just big Pacific sails.
Yeah, and my understanding is, Craigie, they have learned that there's really no difference in the species. It's just that the waters over there are so much more fertile and they have so much more bait supply, they just get bigger.
I believe that. I mean, I believe that. They really do. But, you know, our catches this year, in addition to a lot more marlin than we normally do, it seems to be more consistent. But we still got the yellowfin and the mahi. Now, we haven't. And it's been a week and a half since we caught one of those 40-plus pound mahi, but I just think it's just kind of a hiccup. I mean, I really think once the end of May passes and we get past that full moon, the current changes direction, we'll go back to catching, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 of those big mahi every week.
Well, I tell you what, my good friend Martin Cooper just had a fantastic time down there. Said he had a double of blue marlin. And he wants to take me to lunch to tell me about it. I can't wait to go.
He is a hoot. That guy, myself, Maddie, the whole staff in Costa Rica, they love that guy. When he left last week, Joseph sent me a message. Man, we hate to see him go.
Yeah.
I know that guy. He's a hoot.
Martin Cooper leaves that impression everywhere he goes. Craigie, we appreciate it, buddy. One more day. I'm checking another day off my calendar until I'll be in Nosara. I can't wait.
Yeah, brother. We're looking forward to it, too.
All right. Thank you, Craig.
Pleasure.
Craig Sutton with Nosara Paradise Fishing. Now it's time for my hometown to be represented, and I am proud to bring you one of the best fishermen I know in Northeast Florida, Captain David Voorhees. David, are you with us?
Hey, Captain Ricky.
I tell you what, you guys got to be loving this time of year, don't you?
Oh man, it's been on fire. It's been awesome. I mean, I like these breezy days. I told the people the other day, I said, you'd rather this breeze than having no breeze.
Yeah, starting
Mm-hmm.
to get a little warm. There's no doubt about it. David, let me ask you a question. You are noted for upper slot reds, and I have seen you at the cleaning table with limits of dandies. Help me out a little bit. What sets you apart? What's your go-to for overslot reds?
Well, Ricky, there for the longest time, I used to always think, and it was the sort of we all thought this, at high tide, these fish moved back into the creeks, and then at even higher tides, they would move up into the grass. And then as the tide dropped, they would move back into the deep holes or come off into the intercoastal and settle into some of these deep holes. But, over the years, I think a lot of things have changed. The protection of the redfish. I mean, there's so many redfish now, and there are so many upper slot reds and 34, 35-inch reds that we're now seeing all up and down the intercoastal waterway. And redfish sort of change their feeding habits throughout their lives. For example, you don't see real small reds tailing up in the grass, and you don't see the really, really big ones. You don't see the 35, 36 inchers up in the grass tailing. You only see sort of like the slot reds that go up there and, go for the fiddler crabs up in the grass. So, what does that tell you? That tells you that, when they're young, they don't do that. And when they're older. So that means when they're out of that range, they're doing different feeding habits. And what I have found is that these deep ledges along the intercoastal waterway is absolutely slap full of upper slot reds and over slot reds. And these are reds that are too big to go out and become spawners and head out into the ocean. And they're too big to be kept, so they're constantly being released. So now we just have a ton of these fish all up and down the intercoastal in Northeast Florida. And what I like to do, Rick, is I like to do that deep water jigging. It's no big secret. I'll put either a mud minnow or I'll put a shrimp on a 1/4 ounce jig head. And I actually like my clients to almost get vertical. And we fish as close to these ledges as we can get. And I'm looking at water that goes anywhere from 20 to 25 feet of water.
Now, David, I'm guessing that tide has got to be incredibly important in this. I mean, you can't do that with a 1/4 ounce jig head and a strong running tide, can you?
No, you can't, but you have to do a controlled drift. In other words, I don't anchor up and do that. You can't do that anchoring up. You have to move with the jig. So basically, you're covering water, but you're covering water that's 20 feet deep. So the key is to get your clients to get them to do exactly what you're wanting them to do. And basically, we cast out towards that ledge, and I drift down it and just tell them to, and they start feeling the bumps in the bottom. As long as they're feeling the bottom, they will eventually pick up when they get that bite. They'll know the difference between the bottom and the bite. And for a while there, a lot of people keep thinking they're getting bites and they're wanting to set the hook. And I said, you're going to know the difference. And sure enough, sooner or later, I'll look back and one of the guys or girls, their rods will just be bent over and line will be screaming out. And it's a good, 33, 34-inch red.
Dave, I would think that braided line's almost mandatory, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because so many times, and I tell people, when you're fishing that deep water, you're better being vertical than you are making long casts. Because when you make those long casts, you're going to develop a bow in your line, and you'll never feel you'll never get that line straight to the point where you'll feel that subtle thump of a redfish. And redfish, they're not known. They're not like the bluefish or Spanish or trout. They're not going to hit it on the run. They basically, all you feel is just a single thump, boom, and that's the redfish inhaling your bait. And you better be ready, and I tell people, count to 3, let 3 seconds go by, and you set that hook.
Gotcha.
And if you wait 5 seconds, you're going to bring back an empty hook. If you wait 2 seconds, you're going to bring back half a shrimp.
Gotcha. Well, let me tell you what, that's a great tip, because very soon we're going to have so many boats on the water, and there's not that many boats deep jigging the ledge of the intercoastal, is there?
There aren't, Rick. And I even, the picture I sent you was from Sunday of the lady with that big red. And Sunday was the Saturday, because everybody stayed home Saturday because they thought the weather was going to be horrible. And it absolutely turned out to be a pretty good day Saturday. Lots of fish, but Sunday was the day where all the boat traffic. And we're catching these fish with a regatta of boats up and down the intercoastal. I mean, here in Northeast Florida, when it comes to that low tide, there's not a lot of creeks you can sneak back into and fish for these reds, because most of these creeks, they pretty much dry up. So you got to stay in a deeper body of water, either it be the intercoastal waterway, the St. Johns River, or some of the major tributaries that go into the intercoastal.
Perfect. David, that is a huge help to guys wanting to catch more reds in Northeast Florida, and I appreciate it ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely. And guys, try that deep water jigging. There's a lot of fish to be caught out there.
Great tip. Thank you, David.
All right, Rick. We'll see you next week, buddy.
Tight lines, pal. All right, Captain David Voorhees. Now, David and all of our action spotters are brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people back to nature. By DOA Lures, the unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids, you want to check out youngboats.com. All right, let's move down the coast a little bit and see what's going on in the East Central region with Captain Jim Ross. Jim, how are you?
Doing fantastic this week, Rick.
Good. The rain obviously dried out and left you, and you guys are back on a pretty good weather pattern, right?
Looks like it. It looks like it's going to be a good one.
Good. Jim, I got a question. We're going to do things a little different this week. I know your fishing's good. It's that time of year, and I realize how many species we're dealing with. Jim, I think you are noted more for big trout and snook in your area than anybody I know. Tell me how to catch a snook where you live.
Well, the beach snook, we want to fish those fish either right in the trough, and you can throw a lipped diving plug. That makes a really good bait. You step out about, thigh to waist deep and cast parallel to the beach. It's a great way, first thing in the morning, especially then and right in the afternoon. Great way to target them there. If you're at a jetty, typically at our inlets, you'll find that this snook want to hold on the inside of the jetties or the inside of the inlet on the incoming tides. And a lot of times on the outgoing tides, they'll move out to the outside, get on the back sides of the jetties, if you will. And live croakers are a great way to find those fish most of the year. When you have pilchards, menhaden, and pogies, those will also work during those seasons. Mullet during the mullet run, and that's a great thing in the fall. And then the fish inside, I don't think there's anything better than a live shrimp to throw at them.
Okay.
And they seem to really like shrimp here in this area. But having said that, for as far as lures go, a soft plastic jerkbait that's in the 3 to 4 inch range is really, really dynamite, especially when you're fishing fish that are around docks or mangroves. That would be my 3 types of snook fishing that I do, and the 3 ways that I target them.
All right, I'm gonna get you to give up a little bit more. Give me your favorite lip diver.
Okay. I really like the Rapala X-Rap size 12 in a greenback or a pogie finish. Either that green and silver or that pogie finish.
Okay, outstanding. And your favorite jerkbait for throwing around the docks?
Absolutely a saltwater assassin 3 inch in the baby bass. It kind of imitates a glass minnow. and I've rigged that on a weedless weighted worm hook. And then if they're out on the flats or under the mangroves, something in a pearl white or an alewife white kind of a color, and that's just a dynamite bait to throw at those fish.
What's more important, time of day or tide?
With snook in the lagoon system,
Yes.
time of day.
Okay.
Because unless you're throwing live shrimp at those fish, there's not enough current to really make a difference. Now, when you get to those tidally influenced areas and real close to our islands, because it doesn't, Ponce has more tide than Sebastian does when it comes to what's flowing into the backwaters. So I prefer the incoming tide to the outgoing tide most of the time. However, when I'm at the jetty itself, oftentimes I prefer the outgoing tide.
Perfect. Jim, that is a huge help. You just made some new snook fishermen in East Central Florida, and we appreciate it so much.
All righty, Rick.
Thank you, buddy. Captain Jim Ross. Hey, guys, we've finally survived winter, and my favorite time of year is here. It's time to put away the high-speed Wahoo gear and break out some of the tackle that can put the fun back in blue water fishing. Listen, we all dream about the days when a blue marlin crashes our spread, but let's talk some facts here. Almost all the marlin we see here in Florida are under 300 pounds, and we just don't see 50-pound dolphin like we used to. So why not stop by Strike Zone and check out the new Talicas and Speedmasters designed to put the fun back in blue water fishing. Now, what makes Shimano and Strike Zone the only team you need to know? While you're buying your new weapons, the staff at Strike Zone can splice 500 yards of braid backing on your new reels just to make sure there's nobody in the neighborhood that you can't handle. So stop by either the Melbourne or Jacksonville Strike Zone today and just feel the weight of the new Talavera rods matched with Speedmasters or Talica reels. You'll see in a hurry that it's time to put the fun back in Florida blue water trolling. Our thanks to Captain Jim Ross for helping us catch more snook in the East Central area. Now we're going to travel downstate a little ways and check in with Captain John Earhart down in Stewart. John, how are you, my boy?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Good. We're certainly glad to have you. John, we're doing things a little different this week. I want to know what your favorite fish is to target in your area and what makes you good at it.
I'd have to say the snook. Stewart is top notch for snook fishing and sail fishing. Those are the two best things that I love targeting here in Stewart, Florida.
All right. Snook in your area. Live baits, which ones, and where are you fishing them?
Live baits are going to give you the best results. Typically, we're using pilchards or thread fins. Especially right now, there's been a lot of pilchards along the beaches and the river. So if you find a larger pilchard and you're fishing it around any structure right now, you're pretty much guaranteed to catch a snook, if not multiple snooks this time of year. We're catching 5 to 10 a trip, and if you have a lot of live baits and you can chum a little bit around structure, you can catch 20 or 30 fish a day pretty easily right now.
That is good. All right. Now, what tides do you like and in what types of areas?
I prefer the outgoing tide during the month of April, but every week is different. Incoming and outgoing tides both are going to yield plenty of fish. You just are going to have to fish different areas, and these things vary week to week. So you kind of want to have an idea where these pilchards are running through the river, on what tide, and that's going to dictate where I'm going to fish. So there's no real go-to answer on which tide is best. It's really just fishing a tide that has moving water, and there's bait fish in a close proximity that are moving through on that particular tide.
Okay. Are you weighting your live baits or are you freelining them?
In the shallower water, 4 to 6 feet, I'm going to freeline them. Any deeper than 6 feet, I'm going to put like an 1/8 ounce weight on there just to get them to dive down a little bit, and it depends on the current. If we have a lot of current, I might use as much as 1 ounce of lead, but typically I'm using about an 1/8 ounce of lead just to get them down below the surface so these snook can see them.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds outstanding. All right. Give me a couple of good artificials if they can't find live bait.
First thing in the morning, I'll use a Nosara topwater, crystal minnow diving plug. Those are going to work really well as the day progresses and the sun gets up. Typically first thing in the morning, I'm fishing a surface to subsurface bait, and as the day goes on, I'm going to want something that dives deeper in the water column, and that'd be a Yozuri crystal minnow or even a flare hawk jig, and you can work that right on the bottom, middle of the day around the bridges, and that's going to produce your biggest snook.
All right, that's outstanding. That's going to help the guys down there catch snook a lot, and I really appreciate it, John. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir. I'll talk to y'all next week.
Thank you, Captain John Earhart from the Chaos and the Mayhem out of Stuart, Florida. Our thanks to John Earhart for helping us catch more snook in Stuart. Now, we're going to go down to Miami to the mayor of South Beach. I happen to know he has a special place in his heart for a big fat mutton snapper. Are you there, Alan Sherman?
I am, and I can't wait for that big bump and then that solid run and the heavy hook set and that weight of that fish screaming line off the reel, and then see that pretty pink fish hit the surface.
Yes, sir.
Mutton snappers, yes.
That spells a mutton snapper. What makes you a good mutton snapper fisherman, and how can people get better at it?
Well, the best way is to fish for them when they're biting, and they're biting now. We're at the approach of May. The full moon was yesterday. Typically, the mutton snappers in South Florida, across to the Bahamas and the Keys, will start spawning on the full moon of late April or in May, and sometimes in June as well. And all that means is all these mutton snappers that are scattered along the reefs offshore get together and do their thing. And while they're there, they're a lot easier to target than the rest of the year. And these are big mutton snappers. These fish are usually over 10 pounds or at least over 8 pounds and can top out at 20 or 25. And, they're a blast to catch. Once you get that solid strike from a mutton snapper, you're hooked, as well as the fish is.
But they're not easy to catch. We don't want anybody thinking that. Give us some of the secrets. How do we catch more muttons?
So if you're looking for mutton snappers, you're going to target some waters offshore in 40 to about 260 feet of water. The deeper depths are usually around artificial reefs. And a little shallower, it's going to be along ledges, along the reef, and any kind of debris that's outside of 100 feet of water. Inside of 100 or inside of 80, I should say, it's going to be on the reefs. And they're natural reefs. Most of them are not alive, but they still hold a lot of fish. To target them, you need to use a good depth recorder, a sounder that can show you a good recording of the bottom. You're looking for drop-offs with markings of fish. You're looking for peaks with markings of fish, and you're looking for artificial wrecks and reefs that have some markings of fish. It's always good to have a nice current, especially if the current's going with the wind. That lets your lines pay out in a straight line instead of going under the boat. You don't like a swinging boat going from side to side. It makes it very hard to feel the strike. And then the deeper you go, usually the longer the leaders you use. Anywhere from probably, about 1.5 feet to 20 feet in length, depending on the current and the depth of water. Like I said, the deeper you go, the longer probably that 20-foot leader. We used to use really heavy leaders. Today, I think the guys are toning it down to fluorocarbons and 50-pound tests or less. I know when I'm inshore fishing for muttons, we're using 20-pound leaders, and there are some rocks to contend with, but you get a lot more strikes with the lighter leaders. 30-pound leader I use a lot on the offshore side, go up to 40, and even 50 if it's a rocky bottom, especially if you're around an artificial reef. Using just enough weight to get that bait close to the bottom or on the bottom. You want to be able to, if you're using a live pinfish, a live ballyhoo, a live pilchard, or a strip of bait, you want to be able to feel that strike. Live baits will usually tell you just before they get hit because they're going to start vibrating. And with today's braided lines, if you're using braided lines, you can feel that all the way to your fingers. And you can, pretty much tell when that strike's coming. Usually they'll bump the baits or it'll be like a thump, and that's when they grab a hold. And then they usually just turn around and take off. And when that happens, you lock down, set the hook. If it's a J hook, if it's a circle hook, just start reeling and you need to get that fish up off the bottom before he finds his home, or else you're going to lose him. We use, I don't know if I just mentioned it, but we use ballyhoos. We use threadfin herring, goggle-eyed jacks, pinfish, strips of bonitas, cigar minnows, a few other bait fish that that we have in the areas, and this is the time of the year to get them.
I tell you, Alan, I've caught some studs on strips of bonita. Like you say, you leave the meat on it. It's just too big and beautiful for them to turn down. Do you find that they go to a live bait a lot faster than they do a dead one, or is the dead one just as good?
No, I think the live bait usually outfishes most of the other baits. It comes to mind the trip many, many years ago this time of the year, because we were actually fishing the wrecks for amberjacks, and the amberjacks we were deep jigging for them, and we were just 30 to 60 pounders every drop you'd hook one. And one of my buddies had pulled out one of the big rods and put a big slab of bonita on there, and we all laughed at him because we're all hooked up with these amberjacks, and we go, okay, whatever. And it wasn't but a couple of seconds later the guy's doubled over and bites the fish at the surface. We're all expecting an amberjack to surface, and he's got about a 15-pound mutton and a big smile on his face.
I can understand that. I got to tell you, I don't think there's a better eating snapper in your shallow water snappers. Now, some of your deep water queens and yellow eyes and stuff maybe, but a mutton snapper tastes good.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
we don't get too many genuine red snappers here. I like that one as well, but the mutton is by far my favorite.
Muttons are better. And Alan, you just made our listeners better mutton fishermen, and I can't thank you enough for it. Please tell us we can talk to you next week.
Look forward to it, Rick.
Thanks, Captain. Alan Sherman teaching you about mutton fishing in Miami, Florida.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Alan Sherman, who just made me and a whole lot of other people better mutton fishermen. Now, see if we can get the master to give up some of his secrets. We're going to check in with the captain of the Broad-Minded, Nick Stanczyk, to talk a little swordfish. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you?
Good. First off, have we caught any swordfish this week?
We've caught a few. Yep, we caught a few of them and lost a few of them.
Nick, I got to tell you, you are more successful than any Florida swordfish fisherman I know of. Help us out a little bit. What's the key to it? Are you fishing a great depth? What baits do you like? Get us a beginner's course on catching swordfish.
Well, probably time and patience is probably the most important thing. So just putting your time in. But when we fish, we like to have a durable bait, something that holds together. So a bonita strip or a mahi belly would be either of those are my two favorite baits. Not to say you can't catch them on squid because they do eat them, but they're just not my favorite. we usually target anywhere from 1,400 feet to 1,800 feet. And if we're not getting bit there, though, we'll slide in a little bit shallower, sometimes out a little bit deeper.
Nick, how important is it that you keep that bait in contact with the bottom?
We fish two rods a lot. So the one rod we try to focus within 100 or 200 feet of the bottom. We'll touch bottom, come up a little bit, and keep it deep. And the other rod's on a buoy, and that rod, there's days they're 300-400 feet up the bottom. So they can be in both spots, but if I'm getting bit on a certain rod or certain depth, I'll try to fish a second one there in that zone.
Okay, obviously this is all electric reel fishing. What's your tackle setup? How heavy a weight are you using, and what size hook?
On average, we use a 10-pound lead with a 10-0 BMC hook, what I use. But we do a little bit of hand cranking still, too. We used to do a lot of it. But like last Tuesday, I had a guy complete his Royal Slam. Last bill fish he needed. We caught two swords. He caught one. His friend caught one. So we can still do it hand crank with a breakaway style lead. And we do use electric most of the time.
Oh, that's outstanding. That really. Now, current. How important is current, and what are you looking for?
We do like to have some current. Obviously, like places like the Gulf of Mexico, they catch them with very little current, or even up in the far northeast U.S. Ideally, I'd love to see a 2 to 3 knot current going east northeast, and then we'll try to cut that drift speed in half a lot of times. So we'll go in and out of gear, bump into the current to slow our drift down. But we still like to move about 1.5 knots to 2 knots, I would say. About 1.5 knots on average.
That's perfect. You just made a bunch of beginning sword fishermen a little better at it, and we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can check in with you next week.
Hey, that's a call. We should be here.
Good deal. Thanks, Nick Stancic from the Broad-Minded out of Bud and Mary's in Alamorada. Our thanks to Nick Stancic for helping to make us all better swordfish fishermen. Now, I want to start up the West Coast and check in with our buddy Greg Stamper. I know one thing he's in love with, juvenile tarpon. Are you there, Greg?
I'm here. I can hear you very well, Rick. How are you?
I'm fine, but I think I'm like you. I don't want to fight with those 130-pounders anymore.
No. I'm definitely more involved with the smaller size. Up to maybe 70, 80 pounds. That's about where I don't want to go any higher. So for me, it's all about those smaller ones that are 10, 30, 40 pounds. They come into our back bays and our estuaries quite consistently throughout the summer, and we target them quite regularly. The nice part about that, though, for us, Rick, is we're doing it really early in the morning or late in the evening when it's not so hot.
So time of day is important to what you're doing.
Well, I think it depends. So you got these big fish that are offshore, right? And they're out there in water that's cleaner. They got big eyes. We're talking about a fish that has large eyeballs.
Yep.
And I think the sun kind of bothers them some. So these smaller fish that are in our back bays in the estuary system, they're dealing with tannic water. It's very brown. It's a little bit darker than the usual stuff. And I do believe that light is a problem. They get sensitive. So for me personally, I find that the best bite for juvenile tarpon is being out there way before the sun comes up, so you're already where you believe they should be, and we can target these fish because we know kind of where they'll be at certain times of the year. Being there early, getting there before the sun comes up, you see what their attitude's like, and we'll throw a variety of different baits at them. It could be anything from pilchards, it could be flies, it could be artificials, etc. But those fish usually turn off after about, an hour and a half to 2 hours of sunlight comes up.
Uh-huh.
Now, on the contrary, if you get an overcast morning, so you got cloud cover, you might get an entire extra hour of those fish being excited and eating and feeding as they should.
And I urge this so often, Greg, with so many guys, look at a fish's eye. If you want to tell how important light is to him. You look at a mahi offshore, he's got a little eye, it's over on the side of his head. Well, the sun's not a big deal to him. If anything, it helps him hunt. You take a blackfin tuna or a tarpon, he's got that big eye on top of his head. He doesn't want to mess with that sun that much. That's an excellent idea. Now, you mentioned getting in there before the sun's up. Is that so you don't spook them when they start moving around?
Well, it's a little of both sides of that story. I can tell you one thing about doing what I do, and I do it a lot in the summertime. I've done lots of seminars on it, but the no-see-ums are going to kill you for that first hour. But honestly, for me, it's more about getting to that spot where I know those fish should be, and then rolling in there slow on my trolling motor is the normal. Once I get within, say, about, 500 yards of where I believe they should be, and then cruising in there softly. So as that light first starts to break, I'm talking, Rick, I can barely see what's going on. You start to see those rolls. And when you get multiple rolls of multiple fish and their tail wagging and they're happy, I know it's on. That also gives me the opportunity, Rick, though, if I don't think their attitude is correct and they're really not into it, I can still run and hit one or two more spots as quick as I can to find those happy fish.
Okay. Tell me how I'm going to look at a fish that rolls and decide whether he's happy or not.
Well, Rick, if you've been doing these little baby tarpon in these back bays as long as I have, I can tell you right now, these fish, if they roll in multiple groups and their tail wagging, in other words, they come up quickly and they go back down, they're hunting. If they're just doing single slow rolls here and there, they're just kind of like doing their thing. They're not really into it. But you can tell a lot by the way that you see these fish act. Even today, Rick, I did some fish that were 60 pounds in our back bay, which, by the way, are freaking showing up big time. We went 2 for 3, and immediately I could just tell by they come up and roll here and there, and they tail wag, and they slap their tails on the surface, and you can just tell they're hunting. They're looking for stuff. If something twitches, they move quickly. That's what we're looking for. We're not looking for that slow, lazy roller who's just kind of like lollygagging through the morning because it was a full moon, and he's out there just like, I'm so full, I don't even care about what's around.
That is a great piece of advice. I love that. All right, give me one bait to throw at him.
So if we're going to do a live bait, we're going to talk about a pilchard. That's number one in this neck of the woods. They will eat other things, small finger mullet, very small. If we're talking about juveniles, they will definitely go after other things that are artificial, like our flies. Me personally, I like reds and whites or orange and black. Those are my go-to baits when I have to fly fish. And of course, there's a lot of different types of soft plastics. They have to be mimicking those small baits, though. We're talking about fish that are 10 to 30, 40 pounds. That's like the maximum range. So they're not going after these giant baits. You're not throwing 7, 8-inch mullet in there. You're going after the small stuff that they're going to be chewing on. And that's basically it.
Bingo. Boy, I tell you, you just made everybody in your area a better juvenile tarpon fisherman. And Greg, we appreciate it so much. Thank you.
All right. Tight lines, Rick. I'll talk to you next week. Looking forward to it.
Captain Greg Stamper with a great tip on how to catch baby tarpon, juveniles up to about 50, 60 pounds, and they are a whole lot of fun. Our thanks to Greg Stamper for a great Southwest Florida report. Now let's pull up into the West Central and check in with our man, Ray Markham. Ray, how are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
Another neighborhood is absolutely beautiful out here today.
Outstanding. Outstanding. I'm assuming you fished today.
Well, we went out and drowned worms.
I see. Hey, let me ask you a question. We're doing things a little bit different this week. I know your fishing's good. It's that time of year. Ray, I have known you more for big trout than anything else, I think. Drill down a little bit and dial us in on how to look for big trout in the West Central area.
Well, right now you'd probably have a hard time finding them. And be honest with you, we don't have the big trout that we used to have, but if I was going to be looking for big trout, now to me right now, a big trout's going to be probably 23, 24 inches.
That's a good fish, Ray.
That's now. I mean, if you'd have asked me 15 years ago, I'd have told you a 30-inch trout was a big trout, but times change and we're on in recovery mode and we're heading back in that direction and it's a good direction. But if I was going to be looking for trout, I mean, you take today, for instance, we got full moon tonight. We got tides that are dropping out. There are going to be some negative lows. It's going to put a lot of fish in potholes. And honestly, it's one of my favorite times to go out and fish and wade fish. When you get into those real negative lows, you can get into some waders, take some topwater lures, some jigs, and work the edges of the potholes and the channels. You can just walk right up to them, and those are where I'm finding some of the biggest trout right now. They can slip off into that deep water and feel safe, and as soon as that tide starts running back up and the bait starts getting up on the flats, then they go back up and chase them again. So, but it is a good deal, I'm telling you.
Ray, it's always been my feeling that being out of the boat, wading in the grass is far superior to being in the boat. I think if you see them, it's too late. They've already seen you. You agree that wading is quite often the best way to get a big trout?
I absolutely agree with that, Rick. You know, and even the best boats made, and there's some really, really phenomenal boats out now. They make some noise, whether you got a little bit of hull slap, or if you got a guy stepping down off the casting platform and creating a pressure wave away from that boat, those fish are going to feel it before they hear it, maybe. And so, you know, if you're a quiet, slow wader, you're going to absolutely whack the fish. You can sneak right up on them.
A slow wader silently with a long cast, right?
Absolutely.
Got it. Bullseye. What a great help to guys looking for big trout in your area. Thank you, Ray. Please tell me we can check in with you next week.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it, Captain.
Thank you, Ray. Ray Markham with a West Central Report, where it's about big trout time. And Ray says, get out of your boat if you want to catch the best of them. Hey, guess what? It's getting hot in Florida, and of course that means the water is warming up too. And just like the great fish have always done, the biggest and the baddest of so many species we fished for will soon be holding in deeper water in an attempt to cool off. You name it. If it feeds deeper in the water column, it can't refuse a DOA Terrorize. It dives straight down and it crawls across the bottom with an action that no deep feeder can resist. Whether it's a crappie deep under some lily pads or a tarpon rooting around bridge pilings, DOA makes a size and color Terrorize they just can't say no to. Flashing that big bright eye in front of any bottom fishing game fish is just plain unfair. Maybe that's why they call DOA lures the unfair advantage. Get you some today. All right, we're going to Homosassa, and if we can get the mayor from keeping all the golf carts under control, I know what fish I want to ask him about because I've fallen so much in love with him. William Tony, are you with us?
I'm here, right here downtown Homosassa.
All right, everybody behaving themselves?
Yeah, we got a nice quiet evening. We had a big, busy, weekend. They had a big tournament, 250 boats.
Really?
So we're all, it's a Citrus County Builders Association tournament and trout and redfish deal. And there are quite a few folks down, festivities, but it's all quieted down. We're all back to normal as it should be.
Good deal. You and I share an affliction in the fact that if we see something floating in the water, we can't help but look at it to find out if there's a triple tail on it. I want to find out what makes you such a doggone good triple tail fisherman.
Well, there's a couple different things that I've learned throughout my fishing career about triple tail. And the first of it started when I used to work on a stone crab boat. And pulling those traps and everything, there's just a big line of buoys. And, it gets pretty monotonous. After about the 50th trap, you would see like a triple tail. You get bored, but you're staring at them. So the triple tails are always a, curious fish and trying to figure out how to catch them after my stone crab career. And what I found is that those same fish will get up and down here on the Big Bend. They kind of follow the temperature range. I'm talking like 72 to 76 degrees and up to 80 is their best range in our area. And I found darker water is always better. Our creek mouths and bays. I know Waukesassa Bay up there, those guys, Jimbo Keith and Danny Allen, them guys, they get some big ones up there around Cedar Key. But we get some decent ones here in the Homosassa and Crystal River area. And the last few weeks, we've been getting one or two. Last Wednesday, I think we got 14 off one buoy. Woo! And this morning we caught 10 with two that were 19 and one was 21 inches. The keeper size is 18 inches here on our side. So, they're I will say they're about the dumbest fish there is. But as soon as you say dumb, they'll turn off and make you look like a fool.
Okay, let me make a comment on that dumb. I came up on an old floating buoy with a shrimper's tri-net on it out in about 140 feet of water the other day. And there were a half a dozen really nice mahi under them, with 4 of them came home with us. There was the biggest triple tail I had ever seen. And and before we got within casting range, boy, you could see him just haul butt. We never saw him again. They ain't always dumb, Cap.
And that's right. And, this is believe it or not, this is a trick I learned from a captain over on the East Coast. One time we were over at the DOA event there with Mark Nichols and Rufus Wakeman there over on the Indian River. And the particular captain I was fishing with, I can't remember his name, but he told me about FADs. Now, we're talking FAD, fish attracting devices.
Right.
So when I was there, he had made up his whole line a mile long of his own triple tail attracting devices, which I utilized over here and actually had pretty good luck with them. And it's pretty simple. It's basically a cinder block, an old crab buoy, some black crab rope, 3-strand poly, the black crab rope. And what I had found, there were triple tails around areas that got a lot of pressure. They were generally markers that people went past and would see them, and they'd cast everything in the world, couldn't get a response at them and any of that. So they were popular spots that everybody fished and knew they were there. Every now and again, you get one to bite. But what made me get those fish and how I worked at it was I would make those fads with basically the cinder block and the crab buoy, that poly line, and I found that a brown palm frond, not a green one, it had to be brown, woven into that piece of rope, and I would put it about 200 to 300 yards away from that popular spot. And I would sink the buoy about 6 inches under on high tide. And that way I'd mark it on my GPS, and those fish would gravitate toward that waypoint or that marker that I put down, the fad, and get away from the pressure. And only I could go because I do the number, and I would catch them.
I'll be doggone. That's crazy. But I do know that they love those big brown palm fronds when they float offshore. There's no doubt about that.
Yep, and then that was a way to just kind of getting them for your own. But even in that, using that brown palm frond just for the triple tail, I get a lot of cobia that would show up on that, and mangrove snapper. And the thing was, it's biodegradable. So once that palm frond kind of disintegrated, what I would do is pull them. Usually by then the season or the time frame was over for the triple tail, and wind them up and keep them here at my business house. And then when I'd start seeing them show up again, I'd get me a couple brown palm fronds and be like, okay, well, I'm going to lure them over here and have them to myself, which I think people could do that anywhere around Florida that have triple tail and kind of make your own run. The gentleman and the captain that I fish with on the Indian River, he had his own set. It was probably about a dozen of them that ran for a mile, just that he knew. And he said that sinking that buoy would really help keep people away from it, because if someone sees a buoy like me, and like you said, we're going to run over and check it out. But if you get it to where it's sunk just below the surface and mark it on your GPS, shut down and let the wind or use a trolling motor and drift up to it very quietly, you can pretty much own those fish.
What a great idea. You just made everybody listening a better triple tail fisherman. Now, what are you going to throw at that palm frond?
Okay, this is my favorite triple tail bait. It's pretty simple. It's basically a popping cork with about 14 to 16 inches of 30-pound leader with a 1/8 ounce jig head with a shrimp on it. And the reason I like that popping cork, because it's going to float and you can visually see where that bait is. And a lot of times I found triple tail won't leave that structure very far. They may come out 15 or 20 feet from it, but if you're 30 feet off, you're not going to be in the range. And what you can do with that cork is manipulate it and reel it right up to where that structure is, your buoy, and keep that shrimp right in the strike range where those triple tail are going to take it. A lot of times when you keep it that shorter leader, you'll see the fish come right up and eat it, and basically it'll just barely sink the cork. Sometimes the cork will just stay stationary, and you'll see the fish laying under it, and 9 times out of 10, he's already taken the bait, and you got him.
Huh. I tell you what's frustrating. Throw a live shrimp at a 15-pound triple tail and have him where he won't leave that daggum popping cork alone.
Yeah, that can happen too. And the other day, in fact, today, the popping cork, we didn't even have a shrimp on there, just a bare red jig head. And they were so thick around it and got in competition, they were coming and biting the cork and also biting the jig head with nothing on it. It was pretty fun. And it leaves a good opportunity, too, to put that fly rod out there and catch them on the fly.
I would say so. William, you just made everybody in your area a better triple tail fisherman. That is a fantastic idea, which I fully intend to steal, and I appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yep, I'll be right here in downtown Homosassa.
Thank you, Captain William Toney. Outstanding job. All right, thanks to Captain William Toney in the Big Bend area. Now we're going to move into Northwest Florida and check in with Captain Kevin Lanier. Captain Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, I'm doing great tonight. How about yourself?
Outstanding, my boy. Let me ask you a question. We're doing things a little different tonight, and over the last year and a half, I guess, of listening to you give reports, I've really noticed that you do so well on big red snapper. Is that kind of your specialty with your charter business?
It has. It's evolved into that because it's like the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Right.
People come down here and they want to go red snapper fishing, so that's what we focus on.
Well, they come there because they can't catch them on the East Coast, so they might as well come over there and catch them. I understand you guys just had an announcement of a June 4th through July 28th opening.
Yep, that sounds about right. The Gulf Council just announced that. They announced the federal season a little bit earlier. That was June 1st through August 3rd. So we're going to have a good season this year.
Yes, you are. Congratulations. All right, help me out. How do you differentiate? Why big red snapper?
Big baits, focusing on leader length. I'm a firm believer that if you use a little bit longer leader length and a bigger bait, you're going to get a bigger fish. And we try to stay away from a lot of the smaller ones by upsizing our bait so the smaller ones can't necessarily eat it.
I wish a lot of guys would do that. We'd have less mortality in the smaller fish. I have so many guys, Kevin, that say, well, that long leader stuff, that's a bunch of crap. It's not like they can see the sinker. And here's my thinking on that. I don't think it's because they can see the terminal tackle. I think that it's because the ocean's constantly moving, and that bait looks a whole lot more natural on a 20-foot leader where it can move with the water than it does on a 2-foot leader. Am I right about that, or am I off in left field?
No, I think you're right about that. I think grouper tend to be a little bit terminal rig shy, but I think you get into that longer leader, you're going to give that fish an opportunity to swim around and actually act distressed, and that's what's going to bring out those big red snapper. They're going to attack that bait.
I see. All right, give me a top 3 baits for big red snapper.
Pinfish have to be the number one. Small white grunts would be another one. And then the next one, oh gosh, that's hard to say. I'd have a hard time passing up a small squirrelfish.
Gotcha. Small squirrelfish. That's interesting.
Yeah. They call them sand perch.
Right.
People call them things. But if you get one about the length of your hand, look out.
Gotcha. What size hook? What size hook? What size leader?
6/0 circle. We use normally 80 pounds on our leaders, just to be safe. Sometimes we'll drop down to 60, but primarily we use those 80-pound leaders for the rocks. That's the main reason.
For your main line, are you fishing braid or mono?
Oh, braid always.
Yep, gotcha. A lot more pressure on a fish with braid, that's for sure. Well,
and two, it makes it easier for the customers to feel the bite.
And Kevin, I don't know how it is on your side. I don't want to pretend like I do, but I know on our side, I do a lot better on red snapper on places that most people wouldn't even stop, and it's probably been a long time since anybody's been to. Do you tend to find them more on hard bottom or in small ledges than you do the big public numbers?
Oh, absolutely. The big public numbers will be hit pretty hard the first couple of weeks, but we get out there in the hard bottom prairies, and I don't have to see a mark to start fishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I know exactly what you mean. Now, it has always kind of been my theory on those big red snapper, and help me out if it's that way over there. I try to take one or two off a spot, and then I'm gone. I'm not going to stay there and throw fish back, and I'm not going to stay there and pound them. I find if you can sneak in there, get you one, maybe get you two of the big sows, then get out of there. Then if you need to in 3-4 weeks, you can go back again.
Oh, absolutely. One of the big things we find out is if you miss one or two in a hole, you might as well leave.
Yeah.
Because the bite turns off. And, I don't know if they go down there and tell them, hey, don't bite these things, but it's a given fact. We don't fish holes out. I'm a firm believer in that.
I am too. Captain Kevin, you just made everybody in your listening area a better big red snapper fisherman, and I appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
We'll be back here next week, and hopefully everything will be just hunky-dory.
I know you're waiting for June 4th. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Have a good evening.
Our thanks to Kevin Lanier, who made us all better big red snapper fishermen. Now, you can't leave Florida without going out the Panhandle, and I know a young man out there that is very good at catching speckled trout. Tyler Massey, are you with us?
I'm here, Rick.
Good deal, buddy. It's good to hear from you. Everything going okay out there?
Yeah, everything's going great. Fishing's awesome.
Good, good. Tyler, you guys get a lot of trout out there. In fact, you're getting more trout now than the East Coast is getting. What makes you good at catching big ones?
So, the thing with the fish in our area for big speckled trout is there's two things that I focus on. The first being bait. Bait is the most important thing for me when I'm trying to catch a big speckled trout. The bait of choice is definitely going to be a croaker.
Oh,
if I could have a croaker over anything, I'm taking it. Over shrimp, over a pinfish, over a pigfish. A croaker, it's like it almost creates trout. It's crazy. You could fish in a spot. You could fish in a spot for 30 minutes using lures, throwing topwater, live shrimp, whatever, and then you don't get a bite. You throw a croaker out there, you're on in 10 seconds. It's pretty incredible, So, over our trout fishing, we've learned a lot, and more so about how to find and catch croakers than even where to go to catch speckled trout.
Now, what size croaker are we talking about?
Anything I'd say hand size or smaller is what we're using. A 6-pound trout can eat a bait way bigger than you could ever you would actually think they could eat. So any croaker that's, let's say, 5 or 6 inches or smaller is going to be what we're looking for. Once we catch all our croakers on hook and line too. So we're using cut squid and cut shrimp on small circle hooks, and we're throwing them in bayous and in bayou channels and that kind of stuff. And that's where we're catching our croakers. So we go spend maybe even a day catching bait, and then we're on to catch trout the next day.
How about that? Are you free lining the croakers, or are you weighting them down, or what are you doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do both. Free lining is definitely our first choice. If it's a situation where we're fishing deeper water or fishing a bridge or something, we will fish them with a jig head hooked in the lips. So either hooking the croaker in the back, like in the shoulder, kind of letting him do his thing, hooking him through the lips, or a jig head through the lips, kind of leads him down, gets him down, below the surface just a little bit. So, but a free line croaker typically swims down towards the bottom when you let it turn him loose. So, that's our go-to method.
How about that? No cork or anything. Now, if I understand you correctly, you're not casting them and dragging them. You're just putting them out and let them do their thing, right?
Yep. We pin down, with our iPilot trolling motor or anchor, and we're fishing structure. So, a lot of places you can catch a lot of trout on grass flats, on canal mouths and that kind of stuff. But when we're trying to catch a big speckled trout, we're focusing our efforts on deeper structure, rock piles, bridge pilings, stuff submerged. There's deeper docks and stuff that we catch them on. So, a trout's not a fish that you really think about structure oriented, but they really are. Any kind of submerged, rock pile or structure is gonna, and I'd say less than 10 foot of water closer to the bank is gonna hold some trout.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Tyler, you just made everybody in your area a better big trout fisherman, and we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check in with you next week.
I'll be here.
You got it. Thank you, Captain Tyler Massey. That wraps up our trip around the state for tonight. And gosh, that was a lot of fun. Boy, did I learn a lot. I had no idea that swordfish could often be caught as far as 300 feet off of the bottom in the daytime. I had no idea that speckled trout preferred a big croaker to almost any other live bait. I didn't know nearly as much about mutton fishing as I knew I did. My goodness, David Voorhees has got something going on with that deep dropping in the intercoastal waterway for big redfish. This has been a lot of fun tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, or if you have a question for any of our action spotters, anything we missed, go on the Florida Sportsman Facebook page and leave your question, or you can email me directly at rick@floridasportsman.com, and I'll make sure to get your question on the air. We want to thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. And remember, each and every podcast is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people back to nature. By DOA Lures, the unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Until next week, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we will see you on the rip.